Welcome to episode 2 of the BioPulse podcast. My name is Jordan and I'm the founder of BioPulse. This podcast is about diving deep into the health and wellness rabbit hole, uncovering hidden truths, challenging conventional thinking, and exploring powerful practices that can have a real impact on how we live and age. Today, I'm joined by Kim Rogers, otherwise known as the Worm Queen. Kim is the co-founder and CEO of RogersHood Apothecary, a wellness platform focused on parasite awareness, detox education, and root cause approaches to health. After nearly 20 years working inside of Western healthcare and medical education, a personal health crisis led Kim to investigate overlooked root causes like parasites, mold, and heavy metals. With a fast-growing online community, she now turns complex detox topics into structured, easy-to-follow guidance that people can use to reduce exposures and support their health. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I don't think it would make much sense diving straight into the topic at hand without first understanding your journey. So could you share a little bit about your background working in Western healthcare and then how you transitioned to the holistic root cause side of things?
Yeah, so my name is Kim and I'm known as the Worm Queen on social media and the internet. And I got crowned the Worm Queen because I went viral in 2021 over my own parasite cleanse journey. The video that I did was around 60 seconds and it got 1 million views in the first 2 hours and comments. And I started just seeing this need to talk more about it, which I felt really grateful because of the fact that I do come from Western medicine and I was on my own self-care healing journey. And I've been in Western medicine since 2004. I hold 2 healthcare degrees and I was a professor and I ran 25 healthcare colleges. And in 2019, my own health started to decline rapidly to a point where my husband and I started to get our affairs in order. We quit our careers, we sold our house and all of our belongings, and we moved out to a recreational piece of property that we owned to build a log home and to either heal me or to figure out how my husband could grieve because I was that sick.
Wow.
And so we just started, and here's what happened the last 4 years of my life. Really pushing the boundaries and figuring it out by diving deep into what is now a issue of parasites, mold, and I also have chronic Lyme.
I want to dive into a bit about how you decided to take the journey into your own hands, because I could imagine that, especially with how sick you were, that would have been an extremely difficult decision. We're conditioned to believe that the experts are the experts, and I feel like a lot of people are in a similar situation to what you were in and might be scared to sort of take that first step. So was it kind of a gradual change from the Western medicine healthcare system that you decided to then take things into your own hands, or was it kind of like, this isn't working, I need to do something about it?
It was more like, this isn't working and I need to
Yeah.
do something about it. I had stage 4 endometriosis and a hysterectomy when I was 29, and I've had 13 surgeries. And in 2019, I had a surgery that just was kind of not really doing a good, it wasn't servicing me anymore.
Yeah.
And so it got to a point where I quit going to the bathroom. And when I reached out to my doctors, they basically told me that there wasn't much left for me to do and that this is what my life looked like. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? There is no way at 40 something years old that I'm just going to lay down and be like, okay, I'm going to keep all of my health journey in your hands. So that's when I really started to dig in and be like, well, if I got off this medication, if I did this, if I switched myself over to something more holistic, could that help me? And they were like, yeah, we don't know anything about that. And so at that point, my husband and I had decided that we were no longer going to follow the Western medicine profession. And it was hard because I personally love medicine. And so it was like, okay, well, what can we do to fix this?
Why do you think the Western medicine system has such a focus on symptom management rather than actually trying to get to the root cause of an issue or a health condition?
We're really not taught in Western medicine about root cause. We're not really taught about nutrients and nutrition and alternatives. And I find this like a twofold, right? One, we have to stay within a box because we're licensed and there's malpractice.
Yeah.
So that's always on people's minds. And two, the way that we're trained is like an indoctrination in a sense. And I'm also an expert in a lot of different parts of Western medicine. So I just know on a personal level that I would stretch those boundaries a lot as a professional to assist people to figure out what else is going on with them. But that's just not how we're really trained. We're trained to identify a symptom and what pill we can do
Yes.
to help that symptom. And then if there are side effects to that pill, then what other options do we have? So there's kind of different ways that we've all been taught over the last 101 years that we've been in the Western medicine country world. And so I think it's really now just about kind of breaking those rules in our minds and allowing us to have a little more freedom. And that's really what I kind of did when I went out onto my property to figure out what was wrong with me is I literally went out there to get off of my benzodiazepine after 22 years, figure out why I wasn't going to the bathroom, and I turned to mushrooms and I turned to research of plants, and it ended up helping me in so many ways. But it really is a trying to break your mindset of how we've been indoctrinated.
Do you see any signs of that starting to change?
Very much. That gave me goosebumps. I very much see this shift that's happening and I love it. And I'm super privileged because I've been a part of it. And I really feel like going viral in 21 was exactly what needed to be done in order for people to understand that environmental toxins are a real thing. We really are impacted by heavy metals, by mold, by parasites, by Lyme. I would probably not need to have a hysterectomy after I found out I had Lyme, but that was 30, I've had it for 30 years. Chronic Lyme, end stages. And now that I've gotten it under control, the movement that my doctors all thought was endometriosis and adenomyosis had nothing to do with those things.
Insane. You mentioned mushrooms. I'm interested
Mhm.
to hear how meditation and psychedelics played a role in your health recovery.
I was able to go internal. I was able to break down my ego and my actual consciousness that I listened to, right? The noise calmed down. And I was able to go into a part of my mind and I was able to calm my life around me down. I'm a pretty high achieving, very active. I've got a lot on my mind. And so I feel like that contributed to a lot of my issues. And so I was able to kind of remove myself out of normal society, took a break out in the rainforest while helping my husband build the log home and just break. And I was able to utilize the mushrooms to help my body kind of calm down. And when you're removing yourself off of a benzodiazepine that you've been on for that many years, you can't just do it at once.
Yeah.
And you've kind of I damaged my DNA while I was on it for so long, and I'm never going to be that person again, but I needed something to help bridge me while I was working on getting off of everything. So it was kind of a twofold, right? Like mushrooms can help you go to the bathroom as well. And so that's why we like started growing our own, but it also just helped calm that noise down and let me reconnect my soul with my body and my mind.
Yeah, I think meditation is something I practice every day. And I think it's, like you said, so powerful being able to just quieten the 3D, the outside world, and go
Mhm.
internal. And I think a lot of people, and I'm starting to see a shift. A lot more people are getting into it. And I personally haven't done psychedelics, but potentially that's something on the cards for the future. But for the moment, meditation helps a lot. I want to give a parasite crash course to
Okay.
people because I'm personally interested in understanding this topic on a deeper level. And I feel like it's still largely misunderstood. And can you explain why parasites in humans are an issue and why people should care to learn about this information?
I'm going to give the definition so it kind of helps everybody in the community understand. A parasite definition is anything that feeds off a host and or in the Latin term, an unwanted dinner guest. So the unfortunate part about parasites in the Western medicine culture is that we've just made this such a taboo subject
Yeah.
that it's not talked about at all. Where other countries, they're like, yeah, we know this is an issue. We arm our community and our people to understand it, and also with medications. And the top three Western medicine countries that just have made this such a taboo subject are the United States, Canada, and Australia.
Yeah.
I own a company where I make our own parasite cleanse called Parify, and those are the top three countries we ship to. So they're also Western medicine countries. I think that we've just been so indoctrinated to think that because we're first world countries that there's no way that we could get a parasite, and if we did it would just slide out of us. But in reality, that's just not really the way that anatomy and physiology works. And so they lay eggs, they're microscopic, they get into our blood, our tissue, and our muscle. We can catch them from food, our pets. I caught ours from water because our water was it had parasites in them in Hoodsport, where all of this went down for us. So I think we've just been kind of told that this isn't a thing. They can absorb 90% of our nutrients while they're
Wow.
just chilling in our bodies. And they're weighted down by heavy metals, which we're constantly consuming heavy metals and plastics, which they consume as well. And then it weights them down. They're coated with a biofilm, so they're hard to remove. You have to do it in a specific order. And that's why I created the kits that I created, because there is a system that you have to do when you cleanse. But they've been kind of removed out of our textbooks. And when you are reading and indoctrinated by the textbook and it's told that like this just isn't an issue, we're just not continuing to research it, where other countries do realize this is an issue and they cleanse.
I saw actually yesterday on social media that, because I was diving a bit deeper into this, and that, like you said, other countries, third world countries, they have parasite cleansers. Just, you can go to the store and get parasite cleansers and stuff. And it wasn't actually until I started seeing your content online that I actually started to understand this topic. Because before that, like you said, Australia, United States, and Canada, it's kind of like a taboo topic. And I had honestly we don't think of it, we hadn't thought of it as an issue or even ever crossed our mind. So yeah, I think the fact that you're starting to bring it into the mainstream, it will help a lot of people. Just want to help people understand it more. So you said a parasite is something that feeds off of a host.
Mm-hmm.
What are the different types of parasites, and where does candida and worms come into the equation? What's the difference between all of that?
So, candida is an overgrowth of yeast, and we all have yeast in our body. But when it starts to be fed by like sugar, it starts to overgrow, and then it starts to tell you to eat more sugar, which then that's a parasite. It's literally living off of you, and that's the definition. But there are multiple styles of parasites. You've got lice, that's a parasite, and scabies, that's a parasite. But what we talk about is protozoas, which is like Giardia, D. fragilis, and Cryptosporidium parvium is parvo, which kills puppies, and that's what I had. And it started to shut my organs down because I had it for such an extended period of time from our water that it was like just feeding off of me. And then there's nematodes, which are physical worms like tapeworm, roundworm, pinworms, flatworms, whipworms, and hookworms. And those actually are physical, which you can see in the toilet at times. Not always, because if you're on a good cleanse, it will demolish them and you shouldn't see them. And if you do, it means that you're one of the three cleansers. You're a digger, a flusher, or a looker. So, I mean, it's kind of like it's its own style, right? So when you're doing a cleanse, you could physically see a worm, and you may not because you might have a microscopic. So that's kind of where I think some confusion can come in, is that there are, microscopic and then
Yeah.
there's physical.
What are the top red flags that you see? Health conditions that people are struggling with on a daily basis that you believe parasites could be the root cause of? What are the most common red flags?
Mostly grinding of the teeth, skin issues, IBS, IBD, um, being up all night. So insomnia, that's a big one because they're nocturnal creatures. They wake up around 7 p.m. They tell you to go ahead and eat so that they have breakfast. So if you are a night snacker, specifically sugar and salt, you really should do a cleanse. We really should just be doing cleanses 3 to 4 times a year. Honestly, I mean, we're so exposed to them every single day that like we should be more proactive. But I would say that if you have unusual symptoms and your blood work comes back, you take a drink of water and bloat. If you are craving food and you're like, I don't know why I'm craving this, you should do a cleanse.
You mentioned that parasites hide in your muscle tissue,
Mhm.
in your cells. Can they hide in your brain and the nervous system?
Yes. So the reason why a lot of people have mental health issues, and I believe that it's because they have a parasite, is because they hijack our nervous system and our lymphatic system. And they're an alive creature. So you've got something alive, a frequency inside of your already alive body. And they do have the opportunity to control what you're thinking because they've hijacked our bodies. One example I like to give is toxoplasmosis gondii, which is the cat parasite, and it actually brainwashes the mouse to be sexually attracted to the cat's urine and to go get cuddled up with the cat in order to be eaten, so that the next stage of it is produced in the cat's gut by an enzyme.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's mind controlling. And there's quite a few scenarios with just that one parasite that can create other issues inside of your life if you do have toxo. Some people actually go down to Mexico that are fighters and get toxo so that they remove the fear, because that's what toxo does to the brain. It goes
Really?
in, it removes the fear. If you're promiscuous and you're like, why did I sleep with this person or why am I doing this? You should get tested for toxo. Those are the two biggest symptoms of toxo is no fear. They actually did a study where people that died on crotch rockets had toxoplasmosis. They did a study, and 100% of the people had toxoplasmosis that they
Wow.
tested that died on crotch rockets because you don't have no fear. You're like just zooming up and down
Yes,
with
yes.
no worries, right?
Jesus.
So
If they can hide in the brain, I would assume then that they can potentially impact vision. Do you see that being the case?
I have done some research, and not just toxo of the brain, but they can cause seizures. And I say they, meaning tapeworms specifically. RFK Jr., who is the Secretary of Health here in the United States, he has neurocystosarcoma, which is a tapeworm of the brain, and it did eat some of his brain. And he took an antiparasitic and it killed it, but there's a physical body that still chills inside of his brain. But
Really?
it's a thing. They can cross the blood-brain barrier because they're microscopic. So that's why it's so important just to be proactive. Don't eat pork that's raw. Make sure anything you eat is completely cooked. If they're in our blood, our tissue, and our muscle, they're in the animals that we're eating, blood's tissue and muscle. And even if you're a vegetarian or vegan, they're on our produce that's raw. So I really do advocate for don't eat raw produce when you're out and about in, countries, including the United States. Be conscientious about ice and water because our water here in the United States is actually not great. I live in Seattle. It's not tested for nematodes. So I've tested the water here and it tested positive for nematodes. So even if you're eating produce that you think's been washed, has it been washed with good water? You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's really just a thought process about protecting your body and being proactive. And then if you're like, I'm just going to do it, just take the Parify kit prior to eating questionably or living questionably, and it'll do its best to make your body inhospitable so that if you do come in contact with a heavy metal or a parasite or even mold, your body knows what to do and try and push it out with the assistance of the herbs.
Why are parasite infections often missed on blood tests and standard lab reports and things like that? How come? Is it because they're not specifically being tested for? Are there any tests that people can do to see if they actually have parasites?
So, our testing is really not great. And so, that's kind of why I do talk about just doing it 3 to 4 times a year. Or if you have some weird symptoms, just hop on a cleanse, specifically because it's not going to hurt you. It's just going to help you feel better and get rid of some inflammation. Our country just doesn't have good testing, and I'm going to be working on that in the next couple of years, because I do feel this is a miss where we don't have available, affordable, accurate testing. I actually did a stool test using the Western Medicine LabCorp, and then I also used the same stool to go to an independent lab that sent my stool to Mexico. And that's when I found out that I had crypto and my husband had D. fragilis and roundworm. And then we had our water sent to the same place in Mexico to get tested. And that's when we found out that our water was contaminated. I'm not sure why. I really look back to when I was in academia and I was a professor, and I broke it down in my own thought process. We gave them 3 minutes to learn how to look at the stool. And if they didn't see anything that was questionable or that they didn't really understand what they were looking at, they would mark it negative. But at the bottom of your lab slip, it says, this is not in lieu of a parasitic
Wow.
infection. So that's their out, right? And so because all of our world revolves around insurance and insurance codes, then they don't have to pay for the very expensive antiparasitic that Western medicine states is expensive. Now, you go to Mexico, it's like $7.
Mm,
You come here, I did a 21-day albendazole synthetic antiparasitic, and it was $24,000.
Jesus.
Good thing I had good RX, but my insurance would not cover it because I didn't have a positive test. And I didn't need a positive test because I saw what I saw in the
Yes.
toilet,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And my doctor believed me. So even though my doctor was like, yo, she has a positive in my eyes, I'm the expert. She's more of an expert than anyone I've ever met, because that's what I do all day for the
Yeah.
last 4 years, every day of my life. And so what's difficult is that the insurance company doesn't really care that the expert, my doctor, told them that I need this prescription. They also need backup. So we're kind of ruled by insurance and Western medicine. So that's that's kind of why we just don't have good testing. It's not affordable. Now, the test that I take for the stool sample is through parasites.org, and I do have every single thing that I talk about and that I've done all in my link tree for people, because this was so much work over the last 4 years to find doctors and to find inexpensive ways to be able to self-heal. That's really what I'm all about.
Yeah, it seems like we need a complete restructure of the Western medicine system, and like you said yourself, you're starting to see signs of that happening. I'm sort of starting to see signs of that as well. So
Mhm.
there is a lot of hope when it comes to that. I mean, you mentioned that we're essentially getting bombarded from everywhere: tap water, pets, foods.
Mhm.
I hear numbers online that 95% of
Mhm.
everyone has parasites. What's your estimate on how many people actually are walking around with parasite infections?
That is because of my estimate.
So that's
Just
your
so you
estimate.
know,
I
that
love it.
is my numbers. So 60 million Americans in the CDC, that's what they say. But you got to remember that those numbers that we're getting from these governmental lettering, right? Those numbers are only from the testing. So if when I sent mine to LabCorp, it came back negative. When I sent it to Mexico, it came back positive. My number is not in that number because I didn't go through a test site that the CDC gets their numbers. So to me personally, I don't agree with the 60 million. I think it's way more than that. And that's from years ago, to be honest with you as well. So, but 90 to 95% is my number that I constantly tell everyone. And it's because we've never cleansed. So they just kind of stay in our bodies and they can be dormant until something super stressful happens or you disrupt them somehow. And then they start to come out and create chronic illness, autoimmune disease. And then you go to the doctor and they're not showing up on labs. They're not showing up in your stool because they're evaders. They know how to hide. They know how to not get caught because why would they want to leave? We are the best host.
Yeah.
we're the ultimate end result host for them, right?
That's actually, the more I'm learning about it, that's one of the scariest things is actually how intelligent they are. A parasite infection is something that get worse over time. Do they just, like you said, they can sort of remain dormant, but can they get worse over the span of 10, 20, 30 years?
Yes. They just grow more. They produce more eggs. They hold on to 6 to 8 times their weight in spores, heavy metals, viruses, bacteria, and other parasites. They literally live in a house that is protected by a biofilm, and you're trying to burn their house down in order to expose them. And so when you do just a random cleanse, like I did at the beginning of all of this, I did just a $30 tincture off of Amazon. The unfortunate thing is that that did not include a biofilm buster, right? So you got to go in and burn their house down. And you also need to bind because while you're burning their house down, all of the stuff that was in the house is like going into your body and absorbing into your body. And so you got to stop all of that or you could get sicker. And that's what happened to my husband and me is that we just did a random parasite cleanse, didn't realize that there's viruses and bacteria and heavy metals hold inside of that parasite. And so I actually had never tested positive for Epstein-Barr virus. I never had mono, and I had a spinal tap being tested for EBV, and it came back negative years before. All of a sudden, I do a parasite cleanse and I tested positive for Epstein-Barr virus. And so I started researching, well, why did that happen? What happened? And it's because I didn't do an herb that helps sweep out viruses. So I just started to
I
think,
see.
okay, yeah. And then we had heavy metals coming out of our body. We had parasites coming out of our body, eyes. I had one come out of my ear. I coughed one up. My husband had them come out of his skin like I did, and our urine. And it's because we weren't binding either. So I kind of paused after I went viral and I thought, well, what else can I do here other than just sit and like educate people? I need to be able to give them some sort of a product. And that is how I got led into RogersHood
Yeah.
Apothecary and creating a business in the midst of me still being quite ill. 4 years ago, probably the last year is about when my health has really turned for the better. But this is a mission, I'm in a movement and my health, whether it's good or bad, I'm pushing through it. So
I
that's
love it.
kind of like how I started my business.
Before we dive into more of the protocol stuff, you did mention sources where people get it, tap water, food. What are the most common places that we get parasites every day? Like, and how can people start to change their environment? I don't know, kitchen habits,
hmm
travel protocols. What can people do to reduce their exposure? Because I think it's impossible to completely get rid of parasites from your environment because we're so surrounded. So, what are some things that people can do to sort of minimize the exposure?
I agree. There's no way to say that you are zero parasites, that all of these things are just going to magically go away. We're just in too much of a toxic environment every day now. And with our toxic buckets overflowing in our bodies, there's no realistic way of saying, okay, one and done. I mean, I see it all day long on my social media accounts that, oh, it's a one and done. No, we just need to be conscientious. And so to answer your question, we really just need to make sure we're soaking our produce. And I have a really amazing produce soak that I'll go over. I also use a ozone bubbler by Therasage that I actually do the two things together to make sure that I'm protecting myself to the best of my ability. So my produce soak is 2 cups of white vinegar, a half of a lime, 2 tablespoons of sea salt. I like Baja Gold, and distilled or filtered water, 1 gallon. I put it in like a container. I let it soak for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I get another container. I fill that full of distilled or filtered water. I put in my Therasage and I let my produce sit in this ozone bubbler to get additional bacteria and pesticides off of my produce and just allow me to actually eat the cleanest, also biohacked because
Yeah.
the sea salt helps add more magnesium. So you're actually adding more into your produce. And ozone helps in a natural way to help remove bacteria out of your body so that you're just consuming the best food possible. I also stopped eating salmon, which I'm so sad about because salmon, I would eat it 3 times a week minimum. If I do ever eat it again, it will have to be fully cooked. Don't eat anything raw. And if you're going to eat steak and pork and bacon, it needs to be really cooked. Our animals are also out in the environments.
Yeah.
And we're eating their blood, their tissue, and their muscle. And so, what makes us think that as humans, we can't absorb the same exact thing that they have absorbed out in the wild? So it's really just making sure that you are cleaning your produce, making sure that you're not eating anything raw, making sure that you're only drinking the best of your ability, bottled water that is a sourced and confirmed clean water, and making sure you're not eating ice that's from the tap because let's be real, these restaurants, they don't care and they're going to look at you funny. When anyone travels with me and goes to a restaurant, the first thing I say is they'll like pour the water and I'm like, you can take that water. I would like to have glasses, no ice, a lime, and bottled water only. And they're like, okay. And here in Seattle, the water has been indoctrinated to them that it's gold. So it's the best water ever because it's mountain water and there's no way anything could ever go wrong. And I like pull out the report. If anyone ever argues with me, I'm like, this has nematodes. So you can drink your worms, but I would like bottled water or no water at all. Thank you.
I mean, I feel like if you're still drinking tap water these days, you're kind of living under a rock. Let's just
Yeah.
be honest. But
Yeah.
I mean, I traveled to Thailand last year, and that was the big thing was like, oh, don't drink any ice, don't drink any of their water. You'll get really sick and things like that. And that was kind of like the first time I've heard about that because it's not really common practice here in Australia.
Right.
I mean, I don't drink tap water anymore. It's completely reverse osmosis filtered. But in those countries, it's common practice to do these things. With your produce soak, you didn't mention baking soda. I've heard people use baking soda in their produce soaks. Is there a reason for that?
I am not a fan of it. And when you add vinegar to the baking soda, you're actually canceling it out because you're creating a salt. People
Really?
take the vinegar and the baking soda because of the effervescence, but you're actually like science is that you're canceling out anything that could potentially be killing because it just creates a salt. So now you've just salted your produce versus actually going in, making it an alkaline base, and it's inhospitable for anything to live in it. And then because I'm even more careful, that's when I brought in the Therasage, which is like this little $100 machine. It's the best. You can make ozone water with it, which I rinse out my mouth with ozone water to kill bacteria. You can use an ozone gas. Like there's so many great things that this $100 machine actually does. That's pretty amazing. But I do want to touch back on the water really quick.
Yeah,
I
go
don't
for it.
think that people realize that when you are bathing in water, you are actually absorbing up to 2 cups of water every 15 minutes. And everything in that water: pharmaceuticals, heavy metals, parasites, mold, bacteria, all those things live in water. And so your skin is your biggest organ, and it's the biggest absorber. It's actually the best way to introduce medicine into your body is your skin. And the next one is a tincture. And that's why I created the tinctures, because there's no fighting going on in your body for the medication to absorb. So when you look at water, most people think, oh, well, it's hydrating me, but really it's doing so much more than hydrating your body. And so you can do baths that have like Epsom salt and magnesium, and it's absorbing. So everything in the water absorbs. So you want to be conscientious. I travel a lot. I take my own filter because I don't know what's in that water. I mean, I have an idea. It's
Yeah.
quite sketchy. And Bali and Thailand, their water's bad, but so is ours. Our water is just as bad from everywhere that I've tested. It's just as bad in the United States as it is everywhere else.
I feel like it could be potentially more toxic with all the
Me
chemicals
too.
and stuff that get put in it. But I mean, people are still drinking it like it's
It's
liquid gold.
crazy. I'm telling you, Jordan, when I go to a restaurant here in Seattle, the looks that I get, people are like, what do you mean you don't want the tap water?
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
seen as like weird. I've experienced that as well. It's interesting you mentioned that the skin being one of the best ways to take in medicine. That's the reason we created our magnesium topical spray, because everyone's guts are pretty messed up these days from numerous sources. So one, you're not actually, when you take supplements, absorbing most of it, to be honest. It depends on your gut health. But two, sometimes supplements can cause issues with people's guts. So that's why we have found that topical magnesium, it goes straight into the bloodstream, and it's just so much more effective than downing pills, although I still take other supplement in pill form. So I want to transition into more of the protocol side of thing to help people out. So something that's popular online, especially now, big part of what you're doing is antiparasitic herbs. Why, if someone takes just an antiparasitic herb they were recommended online, why is that approach not as effective as doing a comprehensive protocol?
well, because there's heavy metals chilling inside of the parasite, and you have candida. So candida is an overgrowth of yeast, like we said at the beginning of this, and that yeast is a normal occurrence in our bodies, but when it starts to overgrow, it becomes a parasite. So you have candida, you have heavy metals, you have viruses, and you have parasites and nematodes. So when you're going into a killing thought, right? When you're taking something that like wormwood and Oregon grapefruit, it is a killing herb. You need to bring in supplemental herbs. You need to bring in herbs that are also going to wash and sweep away the heavy metals and the candida and the other viruses and bacteria. So when I decided to create a company, I realized that these things are missing in the thought processes for people. And it was because my husband and I had no idea, right? We're just
Yeah.
out there raw dogging it, like taking the wormwood and garlic and clove and not binding and not supplementing and not controlling and not helping our liver. So I stopped and I thought, okay, so when you kill the parasite, and so that's removing the house, how do you remove the house? Well, you need a herb like lungwort lichen, which is the herb I use to break the biofilm. It breaks mucus down. It's a really great herb if you have congestion and you're not feeling well. Metal Flush is the name of our tincture that helps break down biofilm. I had some discomfort and a little bit of pain while I cleansed, so I threw in a little white willow bark into Metal Flush. Metal Flush helps break down biofilms. It helps with a little bit of pain, and then I had liver flukes. So is my liver being supported? So I threw in some dandelion root, right? So that when you're going through a system and a series, it's going in and it's targeting every issue and every ailment. And the best way I can describe a frequency and ailment to a lot of people is that each thing that we have going on, each ailment, like a parasite or mold, is alive and has its own frequency. And what I did was realize what herb helps shatter that frequency. And the frequency is something like when an opera singer sings and she shatters the glass with her voice. That's her bringing her voice to the same frequency as the glass. That's all I did. I realized that there's heavy metals in our body, so I brought in cilantro. I realized that we have candida in our body, so I brought in Oregon grapefruit and usnea. I realized that viruses happen and are dropped, so usnea helps sweep those away. And then I realized that while you're in the killing phase and the supporting phase, you got to do the protection phase, which is the binder. And so I brought in something like Ceylon cinnamon and coconut activated charcoal. Ceylon cinnamon helps sweep out mold spores so they don't reabsorb back into your body if they're being dropped by the other environmental toxins that they all live together in that house.
So you're saying the Parify kit kind of evolved over the years with trial and error?
This is the same Parify kit that we started with actually it was the 19th of 2021. And we sold 500 kits the first hour. It was wild. Wow. We are so busy. It's crazy. But this is everything I learned from July until September. So from July, August, and September, while I was in the thick of going viral and really like looking at what this misses that Western medicine has created and the holistic world and functional medicine, biohackers, like this is something that I believe is a complete miss in everything everyone does. Like you can do all of the things. I can do red light. I can do all of the nutrients. But if I'm not removing and cleaning the foundation of my body, the dirt, if I'm not cleaning that, then everything else is there, but it's kind of not getting absorbed and it's not to the maximum benefit if I'm not removing the main problem, which is, in my opinion, mold and parasites and a lot of times Lyme.
It makes complete sense. I hear a lot of talk as well about things like ivermectin and fenbendazole.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say it's very effective in killing parasites and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. What's your opinion on those medications?
So I'm not a big fan of ivermectin. It's because it only kills physical worms, and a lot of people don't have physical worm issues. They have parasite protozoa issues. So for me personally, I think that if you're going to take Iver, you should do it for a very short period of time. You have to bind. No matter which way you look at all of these antiparasitics, whether it's synthetic, which is what I call fenbendazole, medbendazole, albendazole, all the zoles, all the synthetics, you have to bind, and that's a miss. And Western medicine misses it. A lot of people that I see on the internet are not giving you the exact way that you should be using synthetics. Synthetics frequency is only for the frequencies that it decided to utilize it for. So ivermectin is for tapeworm, it's for hookworm, it's for pinworms. Actually, I take that back. It's for hookworm, it's for tapeworm, it's not for pinworms. And so what happens when you're eradicating roundworm, which is Iver, you actually are stirring up a parasite that synthetic frequency is not going to rid. So a lot of people will come to us after they've done the Iver and they go, okay, well now I have pinworms and I didn't have that issue before. Well, yeah, because those 5 frequency parasites that Iver went in and eradicated out of your body where you didn't bind actually stirred up pinworms. And so now you have to figure out a way to remove those. So I recommend that if you're going to do synthetics, which I do synthetics as well, so it's not out of the norm for me, I then follow it up with a Parify cleanse. I follow it up with what we call kind of like the Z pack, right? I have gone in and I've created I've had herbs that I've created in order to get rid of those general parasites that a lot of us have. So I do say you should do some synthetics here and there, but you got to bind. You got to make sure that you bring in a heavy metal herb like cilantro if you're going to do a synthetic, because that synthetic is only treating those specific things, not targeting anything else. So you can actually cause more disruption.
That's very interesting, because I think a lot of people are under the opinion that taking things like Iver and stuff kills everything. It's antiparasitic, kills everything. So that's actually super interesting. Would you say people not using a binder is the biggest mistake when it comes to cleansing? Is that the number one mistake that you see?
Yes. It was my biggest mistake too. It was me and my husband's. And it's because I come from Western medicine. And so charcoal was used when I was in the ER for people that overdose. I mean, I guess that's kind of the same thing, and alcohol poisoning. So we would then give them a ton of charcoal, right, to absorb all of that, not a microdose of charcoal. It just wasn't something that was ever in my vocabulary. And since then, I've learned that there's other things like Fulvic and spirulina. So there's other types of binders that we can utilize than just charcoal, but it just isn't something that people that are classically trained by Western medicine would ever consider utilizing. But it is something that is very important if your doctor or if you're just randomly going to try synthetics, you should bind.
I mean, it's interesting to hear that you say you use synthetics as well. How do you
Mhm.
decide personally when you use synthetics and when you decide to pull out the Parify kit?
I use synthetics if I'm, like once a year, if I'm really in it deep or if something's going on because I did have mold and parasites. I was so infested with parasites that it's just kind of a precaution for me and my natural doctor that we just decide, okay, so I just did a round of it. When I was eating, I was very bloated. And then I followed it up with the Parify kit specifically because I needed to bring in some heavy metals. I don't recommend doing them at the same time, but I do recommend sometimes getting in there and getting a real good kill and then bringing in some support. And as infested as my husband and I were due to our water, because we had worms in our water, that we weren't drinking that water, by the way. We were brushing our teeth with
Yeah.
it. So, it was just all the extras. We had a reverse osmosis with Adback. That's what we made our ice and we would drink with. But we just didn't even think, oh my gosh, we should put a filter on our shower. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like we were just
It's
out
so
there
easy to
thinking,
miss as well, you know?
so easy. It's so easy. But I guess it's just kind of my instincts. I believe Western medicine is here and we should bridge it with holistic medicine. And so it's like I just kind of instinctually go, oh, it's time. And I don't do it often, but I will do it if I'm noticing that there's a possible, like maybe something's gone on. I've caught it somewhere. Maybe it's been a disruption from deep down because they can lay dormant. I do travel a lot. I don't eat as questionably as I used to, but I mean, once in a while, I'll throw in a crab and lobster here and there, and
No
who
sushi,
knows?
of course. No sushi, of course.
No, it's so sad.
I think that's going to annoy a lot of people. Sushi, salmon,
Yeah.
things like that. I want to dive back into a bit of the life cycle of the parasites. And something I've heard online, and I want you to myth bust this, is that because they're so intelligent, when the parasites lay their eggs, the eggs don't hatch until the actual parasite dies. Is that true? Or is that a myth?
No, I think that's a myth. They
Okay.
can dump the eggs on their way out, or they can dump the eggs to regenerate a new community. And so that's where like the full moon comes into play when people say, oh my gosh, you should parasite cleanse during the full moon. That's because they start to dislodge themselves. They hop on your serotonin highway and then they lay their community eggs all up and down that river of serotonin, right? And so it really is they want to regenerate in your body as much as possible. So they're dumping eggs, they're moving around, the eggs hatch, and that's why it's so hard to get rid of them. They're in a cycle, and if you have multiple styles in your body, they're trying to, replicate themselves everywhere. So it's really a not a good situation. And that's why it's so hard to eradicate them.
Yeah. So how does a cleanse tackle that life cycle, and why are things like repeats so important? You mentioned it's probably a good idea to cleanse 3 or 4 times a year.
Uh-huh.
The Parify kit is a 1 month long cleanse. So when you were creating the Parify kit, how did you come to the 1 month mark? Is there a specific reason for that regarding their life cycle and eggs and things like that?
So I decided on the 30 days specifically because of the way that we all think, right? So if I were to have said, you got to do this for 90 days, the idea that someone would cleanse that long is not really going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just human behavior. 30 days feels manageable. So you can start it the 30 days and then you break for 7 and you can then continue to keep going. You could do another one. You could do back to back. It gives the person who's in a self-healing, not very weary of Western medicine thought process as I've got a little more control over this. After 30 days, I can take a break. If I start to feel bad, I can keep going after 7 days because there is a cycle that happens when you're in a killing phase. They drop the eggs. I brought in clove to sweep those eggs out. I brought in black walnut hull to sweep those out so that there's less likely the amount of parasite eggs going to be sitting and hatching. And so if you stop the 30 days, I give you around 40 to 45 days worth of product. So you can do your 30 days, you can break, you can do 5 days over the full moon 2 times during your break, and then you can start another 30-day cleanse. You can also do your 30-day cleanse, keep going and do 45 and then break. So I gave it back to the person to have a little more control. But mentally, people get exhausted. And at 21 days, you are making or breaking a habit. So I really used a lot of psychology of, is this person going to keep going it? Are they going to waste their money and time? Or are they going to actually do it? And I don't want anyone to have a bad cleanse because a bad
Yeah.
cleanse is like a bad trip. No one wants to keep going if that's the case,
Yeah. I mean, like we mentioned before we started recording, I'm currently on I think today's day 7 of the
hmm
cleanse, the Parify cleanse. And so I'm actually personally just interested to see how I feel after the 30 days. And so far, so good. I don't have any die-off symptoms, no stomach cramps, no nothing. So far, so good. Fingers crossed it stays like that. I'm taking the binder. I
hmm
assume that's a big reason why I feel so good as the binder. And I've also done the Fulvic. So can you explain the Fulvic soak?
hmm
Because I did that once the other day. I've only done it once, and I wasn't sure if I saw some little parasites in there afterwards, or if it was like some fluff or things like that. I did take some photos and videos,
Okay.
but I wasn't sure. What can you explain the idea behind the Fulvic soak?
Yeah, so I went viral on Fulvic in October of 2021. And so when I started my business, I'm like, we got to bring the Fulvic in. So Fulvic is an antiparasitic. It absorbs while you're doing your soak. So you can do a foot soak or you can do a bath. And I had worms swim out of the pores of my feet. And
That's
it's on
gross.
video and they swam around in my water. So it's just another really great way to help detox your body, help you understand that you can absorb things through your skin. So fulvic is literally absorbing into your skin, into your bloodstream, and just going in and being like, get out. It's just another really great way to help with die-offs and help with an anti-parasitic cleanse. It's not your main cleanse, but it just supports you and actually goes in and more, you know.
How often do you recommend doing the Fulvic soak?
Usually during your cleanse, you can start it before, you can do it a few times during, and then a couple of times a week if you want. Fulvic is an amazing mineral that'll just reabsorb back into your body. So there isn't really like a guideline, but a couple of times throughout your cleanse is a really great way to do it.
You briefly mentioned this, but it's something that I've seen spark a lot of debate online, and that is the full moon. I want you to dive deep a little bit into this. Why do you mention that you should do a cleanse around the full moon? How does that interplay with parasites? Because for some reason online, this sparks so much debate I see in the comments of videos when it comes to this. No one wants to believe it. They just think it's some woo-woo, idea. Can you dive a bit deeper into that?
So the full moon is when they start to dislodge themselves and your serotonin is higher, your melatonin is lower, and they eat serotonin. And that's why a lot of people have depression and anxiety and some mental health issues is because they're full of parasites that are literally eating and living off of that hormone of the serotonin. So they start to dislodge themselves. They start to hop on that serotonin river, creating new communities and just really wreaking havoc on your body during the full moon.
I mean, it's like common belief that weird behavior around the full moon is because of the moon, do you think that a root cause of that is actually then the parasites affecting the behavior of people and pets and things like that? So it's not
Yes,
actually the full moon, it's the parasites?
I do believe that.
That's
Yes, I
interesting.
do
Yeah.
believe it. And I come from Western medicine where it was like the full moon, we're in the ER, we're urgent care, or I'm working in a medical facility and we're preparing. And it really, to me,
Really?
I don't have any effects during the full moon anymore. But that is how I started to slowly figure out that something was going on with me, was that during the full moon, I would mark my flares. And I thought, this is just really odd. And then about 4 months into 2021, when I was marking my flares were over the full moon, and then I swiped and came across that girl's video that said, I almost unalived myself over worms. I stopped and I looked and I go, oh my God. I thought that I had parasites a few years before, and I started looking at all of my flares, and sure enough, it was always during the full moon that my
It
flares
makes
would
complete
start.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
I personally noticed a month ago, the last full moon, that was when my skin flared up the most. I've seborrheic dermatitis that flares up now and again, depending on diet and things like that. And that's one of the main reasons why I ended up getting a Parify kit to see if that would potentially be the root cause. Because, you go to things like a dermatologist and they tell you, oh, we don't have a cure. It's something you're just going to have to take this steroid cream for the rest of your life and, constantly pay for it and things like that. And I'm like, this was a few years back. I was like, that can't just be the end of that. So I started diving deeper and figured out that I could control a lot of those flare-ups with
Mm-hmm.
diet, and especially because so much of the food we eat today is filled with chemicals. I think that's a big reason why as well. But actually, since I kind of heard of this full moon idea with the parasites, I actually noticed last
Mm-hmm.
month I was like, wow, that's actually when it flared up the most. And currently, like full moon time now, and I think the Parify kit has helped that it's not flared up. So fingers crossed, we'll see.
Oh, I want to tell you something about that for you personally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want you to continue to take Sustain. So Sustain is like our skin one. Whenever you take it, I can tell that you've been taking it. You got a little bit of glow. It happens because of the Sustain. Make sure you're taking that 3 times a day. You can actually take a full dropper of it if you would like. And then going forward, once you get off of the Parify kit, you can keep taking Sustain. Sustain will help control that skin issue. And you are totally correct. Your skin is flared from something on the inside. And a lot of times, people that have psoriasis, have eczema, and have any sort of skin issues, it is a parasite. And it can be a parasite that's on your skin and inside of your body. Your gut plays that role. So, and your long intestine is like 22 to 30 feet long. So
Mm,
you just don't really know everything that's in that
yeah.
intestine.
Especially because, like you said, parasites can be microscopic, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, I remember I see a holistic doctor, and this was a couple years ago, and he takes a finger prick of blood and goes through it live with you there. And I actually saw a parasite swimming in my blood, and I thought this was like 2 years ago, and I didn't realize till after because I was kind of like a bit shocked. I was like, oh wow, I can actually see a parasite in my blood. And then I left and I got in the car. I was like, I had a realization that was just one little prick of
Mhm.
blood on my finger, and I saw
Mhm.
a parasite. How many do I actually have in my whole body? And that was kind of like a bit eye opening there.
That's the best test, to be honest with you, that I would really like to have available to everyone. Literally, it is the best. Live blood cultures are so hard to find, but it is the best because you can see Lyme, you can see spores, you can see a parasite.
Yeah,
And you're right, it's just a small amount. And think about it, this huge body of ours.
exactly. Yes.
And that's just a little bit. So I do believe that your skin issues are going to resolve. And I do believe you should do this more than 3 to 4 times a
Hmm.
year. If you tell society to do this every month, they're going to freak out and not want to do it, right?
Yeah.
But for someone like you, that you're going to start to see those, you're going to start to see those easy little bit of changes that are going to go on in your body. Keep doing whatever's doing it. Keep doing everything you can do to help your body. And that's really what the message is for everyone.
I want to give some advice for people who are like hearing this and thinking, oh, I've got this health issue, unresolved thing that keeps flaring up. Maybe they suspect they have parasites. What's your advice for beginners, and where should they start when it comes to cleansing?
Well, I definitely think you should start. I have 2 kits, and we do have a spot now on our website that says start here because it is a lot. Like you're going in and you're trying to change your life. And so it really does become a lot. I have a fast track guide that you can download for free. All of my resources are free. All of my podcasts are free. I don't charge for any of my knowledge. My kit's $100, and I think you have a discount too. So it's even less. We have sales, but I definitely think you should start with the Parify kit, or definitely look at our lymphatic kit that I just launched in May. And that helps get your lymphatic moving. You should be doing the 3 Ps: peeing, pooping, and perspiring, making sure that you're doing those so that the toxins exit your body and that they're not staying in your body. So the lymph kit is a great place to start. You can take the lymph kit while you're taking the Parify kit to keep boosting the support in your body. I recommend doing red light, cold therapy, sauna, anything you can do to continue to keep your body going and allowing it to stay in movement. That will help push all of this out. But definitely get started with the Parify kit, the Lymph kit. You can grab the Fulvic. You can email us. We'll help you with anything that you need. We try and strive to answer every DM, every email, every comment, because this is such a crazy taboo subject. And I do have doctors that are in my profile that are my personal, or that I have vetted, that believe everything we're saying and that are here to hold your hand and help you throughout the process.
If you have been thinking about doing a parasite cleanse, but you're not sure where to start, this is your sign. Kim has graciously given us a discount code to share with you all that will allow you to get 10% off all of the products on RogersHood.com. Visit RogersHood.com or check the top link in the description and enter code BIOPULSE. That is code BIOPULSE, BIOPULSE, during the checkout process to get 10% off your entire order. So whether you're wanting to detox mold, parasites, or heavy metals, head to the top link in the description and get your kit now. So a couple weeks ago when my Parify kit came, I was actually talking about it with a family member, and obviously my phone was spying on me, right, as it does. And so what happened a couple hours later, my first recommended video on YouTube was a clip from the Sean Ryan show, and Dr. Gabrielle Lyon was on, and it was a clip about parasites. So I'd opened it up and I'd listened. And during that, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon said, and I quote, "Many people try to get rid of parasites naturally, and I haven't found that to work." What is your response to that?
How else do you get rid of them? They're in our bodies. So we're just trying to keep them at bay. We're trying to remove any symptoms. We're trying to assist our bodies in not just removing parasites because they hold on to heavy metals. So there's really no good way than a natural way, in my opinion. I believe that the synthetics only assist you in so many ways. I've seen it firsthand that the synthetics only helped me with specific parasites, but not the additional environmental toxins that my body was fully overloaded with. And I've recorded myself every single day over the last 4 years. So you can actually see my progression of what it looks like to do some biohacking with the side of cleansing and parasite cleansing. So I have to disagree. I have to
I
say
do
that
too.
I think that the biggest thing is proof is in my pudding, and I'm here to just give another tool for everybody's tool belt. And if they choose to listen to anybody that like has not gone through this themselves, that's kind of the thing I think that makes this so viral with me, is I literally am sharing something that's so private and something that no one wants to talk about, that I got crowned the Worm Queen specifically because
Yeah.
I have no problems talking about it. And so I didn't crown myself. My community did. And I love the fact that that we have other options. And if you are at the end of your rope and you cannot figure out what's going on with you, like for me, I mean, I had a hysterectomy when I was 29 years old. If I had done a cleanse, would that have made it so that I didn't have to go through what I've gone through the last
Yeah.
20 years of my life? I'm 46, almost 47 next week. So it's like, if that was something that I had introduced to me, would that have maybe changed the trajectory of my life? And so why not just give it a try? It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to harm you. It's only going to make you feel better and potentially come to a root cause that you could have that is undiagnosed.
Like you said, it can't hurt, right? It's a natural product. It's herbs. Like
Hmm.
it's not going to do anything. So that was kind of my thinking as well. I was like, I might as well just give it a go. Who knows? Maybe it'll help you. It'll reduce the symptoms you have, cure something. Who knows? And I think that the reason why some people potentially don't think a natural approach works or is effective is because, like we discussed earlier, where
Hmm.
they're just taking one antiparasitic herb and thinking that's going to kill everything. So I do really like how the Parify kit is a comprehensive protocol meticulously designed so it tackles every stage of the cleanse. And speaking of that, I want to dive a little bit deeper into Rogers Hood and some of your other products. So you did briefly mention mold. Can you explain mold poisoning or exposure, how that kind of affects people's health, and then where the Moldies kit comes in to play?
So I had mold poisoning in 2022. I just finished up all of my parasite stuff and we were in the thick of it going viral with Rogers Hood, and I found out that our travel trailer had mold in it while we were building our log home. And so I realized that spores stay in your body and then they create, just like what you see on the wall, they create colonies just like that in your body. So if you were to cut your body in half and flip it open, it literally would look like the mold that's on the wall.
Wow.
And so you got to go in and find ways to remove that mold while also breaking it down. It's also around mucus and a biofilm. So you have to come in there and break it down. I do recommend doing Parify 2 to 3 times prior to our Moldies cleanse because parasites hold on to spores. So you want to go in and get and eradicate as many spores as possible in your body. So I do recommend doing 2 to 3 back-to-backs with a 7-day in between of the Parify kit to really get a good baseline of how much mold could be accumulating in your body. Some of the symptoms of mold are hair loss, which is what happened to me. My eyes swelled shut. I'm literally on camera with my eyes like this. It was awful. I never felt hungry. That's a side effect because it affects your metabolism. I was up all night peeing, which is another indication because the body's trying to push spores out of your body, and pee is the fastest way. That's why they do a lot of mycotoxin tests through your urine because the spores are in there. So I created a kit when I found out that I had high levels of mold poisoning and really should have been in the hospital. I realized there just isn't anything out there for this either.
Yeah.
And so I made it simple. It's 3 tinctures and a binder again. And I really gave good instructions. I have a lot of guides to help guide you through the mold poisoning. But I also went through mold poisoning myself, and it was the hardest thing I've probably done.
You kind of answered my next question there as well, because I was going to ask
Mm.
for me, because when we ripped up the old carpet in my office, and this was like 2 years ago, and there was black mold underneath, and I personally haven't done anything to detox from mold yet, so I assume I have some mold exposure. So you answered my
Mhm.
question as to how to time the Parify with the Moldies kit. So that's interesting to know. I will do another round of Parify and then get on
Mhm.
the Moldies kit. You kind of briefly mentioned the Lymph kit, and I want to talk about Gutty as well, because we haven't talked about Gutty when it comes to Parify. Why is it important to support your gut and lymphatic system during cleanses?
So, Gutty is our mucoid plaque cleanse. It's 3 packets that you get. It has psyllium husk, coconut activated charcoal, bentonite clay, and chia seeds. And all of those things have a really great part inside of our intestines and our gut. But a lot of people don't realize that plaque builds in your colon as well, just like in your heart. You're looking at cholesterol. It's the same on the other end, if not worse, in my opinion. So things are living inside of that mucoid plaque, like ropeworms and eggs and all sorts of yucky stuff because we eat so much greasy food and it just accumulates in there. So you got to get in there and like pressure wash it. And that's kind of what gutty is. It's a pressure washer with a magnet. Charcoal and clay are negative charged herbs and they attract a positive charge toxin. And so it just magnetizes itself, and then the chia seeds and the psyllium husk go in and then it all gets pulled out, and sometimes you can have this black rubbery mucoid plaque that comes out. You can have a ropeworm that you never even knew was even a thing come out. But really what it's doing is it's going in and it's allowing your body to absorb the Parify kit as it's coming down and not absorbing the toxins that need to be removed.
Yeah, I mean, I stumbled across a mucoid plaque maybe about a year ago, and then I kind of just forgot about it. So then when I was actually reading about gutty when I had got the Parify kit, I was like, oh, I found it really interesting that it's gets rid of mucoid plaque. I personally didn't see any when I did my 3-day gutty protocol. Maybe that's because
Uh-huh.
I'm still young. Like you said, is that something that accumulates over the years?
I mean, not everyone sees mucoid plaque, but it's still a good way to flush your colon out and just get a little bit more nutrients in there. And it's a good starting point. So that's probably why you're having such a good time
Yes,
on is
yes.
because you did that. You really got in there and did kind of the pre-cleanse. Not a lot of people can do gutty. It's a tough one, and not a lot of people can do charcoal. So it's definitely something that if you do it the first day and you're like, whoa, just you can just pause it and then start the Parify kit. But it is a cleanse and some people love it. Like they do it a couple of times a month.
Aside from your own health transformation, what's been the most impactful testimonial that you've seen from someone using Parify?
My bottle guy, the guy that sends us our bottles. His name is Tyler. I'm allowed to share his story, and I love his story specifically because I don't have children and I had a hysterectomy when I was 29. So, totally out of the question. I love the fact that people who have infertility issues and reproductive problems can take our kit and it gives them a little bit of hope. So Tyler and his wife had tried for 3 years to have a child and they were getting ready to go into IVF. And I said, why don't you just give the kit a try? I've sent it to them, and him and his wife had been trying for 3 years. And within 8 weeks after cleansing, they actually got pregnant. And they have a 1-year-old boy because the body is not fighting to have another thing living off of you. It gets ready to have the thing that's supposed to live off of you prepared and ready. And it feels like it's time. And so when you go in and you flush all of these environmental toxins out, you get rid of that overflowing toxic bucket you have. It says it's time. And so it's just miraculous how things can align in those moments. And so that's probably one of my favorites.
I love that. I want to, this potentially slightly controversial, but I do see so many people starting to talk about it online now that things like, detoxing and parasites and things are becoming more common. Some people online say that they've seen insane transformations when it comes to cancer in regards to cleansing toxins, cleansing things like parasites. Have you seen any stories like that from people using Parify?
I've seen a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of stories. The reasoning behind why this can happen is because the body is encasing something that could be harmful to it. So it's doing its job. And you have abnormal cells that are developing around something it's encased.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just the name of it, right? And then when you do something like chemo, it just completely kills everything, just like a steroid. A steroid pauses, it puts it into a state of freeze.
Yeah.
And so anytime we do anything to keep our cells clean, healthy, and moving, it can assist with not having all of these big words. So I've had quite a few people that have done my cleanse that had issues with their prostate, that have had high numbers of prostate. It goes down. And turkey tail is a good one. That's why I put it into the lymph kit. But it just kind of helps keep your body moving. And yeah, there are a lot of people that think that parasites are cancer and
Yeah,
cancer is
that's becoming
parasites.
more common.
Yep.
Yes.
I actually have documentation from back in the day before we were more indoctrinated
Yep.
that says this. And so I just believe there's so many other things that are involved when you get cancer than just parasites, but I do think it's a big one to do some parasite cleansing.
Yeah. I mean, and like we mentioned earlier, I don't think it can hurt, well, it can't hurt to do a parasite cleanse.
Mhm.
How would you like to see research start exploring this more?
I
Like
think
what?
we need to have better testing.
Yeah.
I actually have a lobbyist that is helping me get in front of government to allow us to have accurate, available, affordable testing. I mean, it's not for the rich, it's not for just insurance, it's for us. It's for our bodies. I would be in a much better health condition if I was able to have pricked my finger, looked under the microscope for blood, had someone who really knew what they were looking for in stool, not had my stool sit out for days and days and days, not given the correct guidance. I know how to take my stool, but I mean, I'm an anomaly because I come from medicine. So to have better education, I really feel like to have sovereignty over our own bodies, that means a lot more than just freedom to choose what insurance. It's freedom to allow me to go to my doctor and say, I'd like to be tested for Lyme, mold, and parasites because I'd like to get that out of the way to see if that is what the real problem is.
Yep.
That's really where we're at in society nowadays, and I will continue to push that.
If you could record a 60-second clip that every doctor and health practitioner would see, what would you say?
Keep your mind open and allow us to choose as a human, just like you would like to have that choice if it was your health that was in jeopardy. My health was in jeopardy. I was dying. I can see it. You can feel it. I went out to my land to die. If I would have had a doctor who was like, let's try this, I might not have gotten that sick. So hopefully no one ever gets into that position where they need to have that medical freedom in order for them to choose between, am I going to go against the grain or am I going to go with the grain and potentially not make it?
For any kind of health practitioners who are listening, what step would you recommend they take? Like, what's the first step in regards to helping their patients without getting their license revoked and things like that? What steps can they take to start exploring this topic more?
Support your patient, let them cleanse, give them that option, give them my number, like just do whatever you can to support them when they come to you because you really just don't know. You don't know. That's the thing. Like I thought I had worms years ago. I went to my doctors and they were go, "No, that's not it. We're a first world Why? What harm is it to allow me to have you hold my hand and guide me and maybe you need one too. So maybe you're going to learn something from it."
Yeah, exactly. I like that. If people could only remember one thing from everything we've said today, is there something that stands out in your mind?
Just cleanse.
I mean, like
Just
that's
cleanse.
simple and effective. I love it. And for people who are kind of in a situation where they have something undiagnosed and they're starting to lose hope and things like that, what's like an important mindset reframe that you used in your journey that you can kind of give some advice to people in a similar situation now?
You really do know what's going on in your body. You just need to trust yourself.
Kim, thank you so much for this has been extremely insightful, and I think this is going to help a lot of people, like you already are helping a lot of people with your content and spreading awareness of this. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on RogersHood.com. That's my website. You can find me on Mrs. Rogers Hood. That's MRSROGERSHOOD. On Instagram, there's Mrs. Rogers.hood. That's my handle over there. And then my podcast is What's Eating You with the letter U. So you can hear me on YouTube and all streaming platforms.
Perfect. We'll link everything below. Thanks so much again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.